Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of 3 Minute Marketing, where we interview some of the world's best and brightest growth marketers, usually across different channels. So we really like to talk with sort of Swiss Army knife marketers about search, about social, analytics, conversion rate optimization, and everything in between. I'm super excited today to have Casey here with us. Casey's CMO of Kazoo HR, which is a disruptive HR and recruiting platform. Before, in his previous lifetime, he had a long and storied career leading marketing initiatives for some of the biggest brands in tech. I'm talking about DoubleClick, Google, Marketo, Adobe. So Casey is an absolute badass, and I'm super excited to have you on the show today.
Cool, Chris. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've been thinking a lot about what I wanted to ask you. I've narrowed it in. Full disclosure, Casey and Kazoo are a client of Web Mechanics. They are in the B2B SaaS technology space. Many B2B brands in general are hot on using intent data, the Bomboras, the 6sense of the world. Many are just dabbling, and really it's not a major influencer. But Casey, I would love if you could tell us just a little bit about about your journey using intent data so far and the impact that it's having currently on your marketing programs. That's what I'd like for you to talk about, and your 3 minute starts.
Yeah.
Now.
All right, let's do it. Yes, intent data, honestly, not an incremental approach. It's disruptive, I think, to B2B marketing in general. I first got exposed to at Marketo, where we integrated and launched Bombora as part of the Marketo offerings, and was really fascinated by what they've been doing. So we started out just kind of bringing the data in and putting it into a rules-based lead scoring model, and really our initial use case was prioritizing the outbound SDR outreach sequences, and initially saw like 3 times better reply and connect rates by using intent data. So we realized, if used correctly, we have something really valuable here. But what we also realized was one of the limitations was anything that's rules-based is not scalable.
Yeah.
So we fortunately came across 6sense, and we're a big 6sense user, which has an intent data network. We're actually now leveraging the Bombora data as well within that, but really using that data to score potential buying stage of our target market. And it really, I think, does a couple things for you. One is it helps you reorient around an account-based model. So what's the buying stage of an account versus the buying stage of an individual, which really helps with that. And it really focuses your marketing campaigns, right? So we have high fit accounts that are in market, and we basically have a swarm strategy. We're reaching out to them through display. We're activating that data into emails. We're activating it in LinkedIn. We're activating it in our outbound sequences for our SDR team. We're pushing that data into Google Ads for retargeting. So any place we can activate that data and swarm that account, that buying committee and those contacts within that account, that's what we're doing. So it really helps us drive the decisions and strategies around velocity and spend across all of our segments, which has proven to be a really powerful way to go about it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I have so many different questions on my mind. But overall, if there's somebody who's kind of dabbling with intent data but wants to get very serious, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I think my initial suggestion would be pick 1 or 2 use cases, right? Like when I kind of look at new technologies or new data, I say like, hey, if I can't get it to work here, it's not going to work anywhere. So I really say like, this is a very specific use case. Let's go ahead, bring it in, test it. Let's look at the results. And, if it works, then figure out how you scale it and roll it out and really take advantage of it.
Brilliant. Okay, love it. Well, our time is up. But use case wise, you might say, hey, let's try it with an industry, for instance.
Yep. Or let's try with this channel or whatever. Yep, exactly.
Love it. All right, well, our time is up, Casey, unfortunately. Casey and I are going to continue riffing. If you want to hear the rest of our conversation, there should be a link in the show notes. Casey, tell the audience where they can find out more about you or Kazoo HR.
Sure, absolutely. Best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn, Casey Carey. I'm at Kazoo. And if you want to reach out via email, casey.carey@kazoohr.com.
Wonderful. Love it. All right, everybody, join us next time for another great one. And Casey, you stay on the line. Let's talk.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, now we can just riff about anything really. The production team is going to go through, so we can talk about like the specifics of your account if you want.
Yeah.
Or we can just continue riffing. And if there are no show notes, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. I think, one thing I would add is it's been kind of interesting, right? Is, we have multiple products that we sell. So we're a platform with kind of multiple solutions. So having the intent data keywords allow us to customize our outreach based on areas of interest has been pretty fascinating.
Hey, could you by chance, because I know for a lot of people, intent data is something that they like understand theoretically, but they can't necessarily wrap their arms around it. Are you able to share your screen and just give us a glimpse? I obviously don't reveal anything like too proprietary, but if you have like a dashboard or just something that can help make it more tangible for folks that are just getting into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me log in real quick.
Yeah,
it's funny you asked that because I've been evangelizing it for about 1.5 years now across the company with the CEO and the exec staff, trying to help them understand what we're up to.
How much does it cost?
We're paying 6 cents, $95K a year right now. It's by far my most expensive line item.
Yeah, but worth it.
So far, so good. Like we've obviously had to not do some other things because of it, but it's basically our entire strategy is built on top of it. So,
I mean, if you're getting 3x response on your outbound, even if it was just that, if that was the only benefit, it would be worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to be honest with you, Chris, like we're not going to outspend our competitors. They're all VC funded and we're private equity. So we figured like we just have to be better.
Yeah.
Let them be lazy and just waste a bunch of money, and we're just going to be really good at what we do.
That's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about. It's all about, I mean, there's a number of ways that you can get an edge. It's all about a little bit of edge. So if you can drop $100,000 and get an edge to the tune of 3x over your competitors, I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I could easily waste that much doing other things like content syndication or something. So I'll show you a couple things here real quick. So generally, how I think about intent data is they've basically categorized the content on websites, right? So if I was to go to SHRM.org, which is the main HR website, and I read an article about performance management, like that article would be categorized as about performance management, right? So whether it's analyst sites, publisher sites, organizational sites, like wherever this content lives, they've basically categorized it so that when I, as a prospect, consume that content, it basically shows up as an intent signal for that topic within a database. It's kind of simply how it works. The mechanics are much more complicated, but so you've got a set of terms that I'm interested in. So one of the terms I'm obviously interested in is performance management or recognition programs. So you basically define those terms. That basically becomes a filter for these intent signals that flow into your marketing programs. So what we're looking at here is all the activity. So this is a bunch of US accounts that we're targeting. And what you can see down below is the branded keywords, terms, and the generic keywords. So it looks very much like a search program in a lot of ways. But it's basically looking at these intent signals versus providing search engine result pages, right? So, and then there are two ways to think about this. There's the third-party data. So it's all these networks of data that create kind of this cooperative. But there's also your own first-party data, which is your website activity, your email click-throughs, that kind of stuff, right? So both of those are intent signals. Before the third-party data was available, we always used our own data, and we would do a lead scoring model in Marketo or something. If you read this article or you clicked in on this email, that's 10 points. And when you get to 50 points, you go to the SDR. So this kind of opens the aperture significantly on behavior outside of your website. Like it's 100x or 1,000x what you're looking at versus like what we had before.
Yeah. Are there real time like activity notifications? Like, are you able to see like, hey, here's the organizations that browsed this week or this month?
No, it's a pretty big lift, right, for all this data to get pulled together and get aggregated, normalized, and pushed into the platform. So we're mostly looking at activity over the past 30 days.
Mhm.
And you know, like we could probably set it up like, hey, they looked at a competitor or something, and we could flag that, but it's not going to be like today. It was be like in the last couple of weeks, kind of
You know,
thing.
we've I'll tell you this because it could be useful for you. It would probably be a complement to this. I don't know if it could be integrated necessarily, but we're partnering with this small tech shop on the West Coast. They have this innovative or this unique technology, which is like, are you familiar with the lead landers and the lead feeders of the world,
Yep.
which basically
Yep.
say what org visited?
Yep.
So it's that, but it also seeks to extrapolate down to the individual.
Yep.
So for every 100 visits, it might be able to match 20 or 30 of them back to not only an organization, but also an individual.
Yep.
We're in the early stages of testing with one of our larger B2B clients, but I'll let you know how that goes.
Cool. Yeah, one of the things, and this is pretty cool actually. So 6sense, you tell them, you know, kind of functionally level and title who your personas are, and they actually score both the accounts and the contacts.
Yeah.
So your account scores an aggregate of both of all the contacts, but not all contacts are created equal. Like if somebody in engineering read one of our articles, like that doesn't matter. What matters is the director of HR, right? So they definitely do the contact level as well. Some of the ABM platforms only do account level. Some add the contact level stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
So we're
here's
looking at the screen, which is a graph that looks like analytics. Across the top, we've got these tabs: website activity, B2B network activity, 6sense media campaigns, external media campaigns, marketing engagement activities. So some of those are self-explanatory, what it would probably
Yep.
show, but what are like the B2B network and the 6sense media campaigns?
Yeah, so the B2B network is all the third-party data.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be the lion's share of the data,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is just the third-party data that's coming in, branded keywords, generic keywords, number of activities, right? So this is kind of the part of the web that most of us never had visibility into the past.
Mm-hmm.
6sense media campaigns is specifically the campaigns that we're running. They have white labeled AppNexus, so we're running a bunch of display. And so this is the engagement against these accounts through those campaigns.
Mm-hmm. And you can see, so you've got 5,000 accounts reached. So that's 5,000 accounts that match your criteria.
Yep.
Shows that click-through rate, the matched impressions. Interesting.
And account view through rates. Yep.
Wow.
And we're seeing kind of on average 15 to 30% account view through rates.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yep.
Well, this is awesome, man. And I wonder, I am curious, like in terms of the B2B network activity. So it sounds like 6sense can somehow sort of monitor individuals and determine what they're reading about, even on third-party sites. Does it show you like, hey, here are the top publishers that, you know, your audience is looking at?
No, they don't really reveal the sources, which is interesting, right? It's a little bit, I think, of their secret sauce, and how they kind of get to this. And they all take a little bit different tack, whether it's Demandbase or Bumble or 6sense. They all have a little bit different sources of data at this point, and how they go about it. And I think like one of the things I always kind of tell my stakeholders is this is not a perfect science. It's directional.
Yeah.
Directional's so much better than nothing. So, and
Now,
then I think the real power of this is, I'll show it to you real quick, Chris, is so you take all this data and you run it into a model,
mm-hmm.
and a model that's trying to predict the likelihood of an opportunity opening with that account in the next 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they're basically looking at all the data, that historical data, both the third party and the first party data, the stuff that's happening on your website, and basically saying, we're looking at that data. We know which opportunities opened. Now, which parts of that data actually are able to predict those opportunities opening and create a model around it, right? So what we get is buying stages. So target is very little activity. Awareness is that began to look at some of this content, kind of top of funnel, if you would, thought leadership kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Consideration starts moving into much more solutions-based content, kind of mid-funnel. And then as they move into decision and purchase, both their activities increase, but the types and level of content they're consuming, both on our website and other areas, are starting to predict that they're in market and looking to purchase.
Yeah, and that's what I was actually going to ask. So this model is based on a blend of first party and third party data.
Exactly. Yep. You don't see any target or awareness counts here because I've actually filtered them out for this segment. But
did you create those stages and define them, or is that just the target, awareness, consideration, decision, purchase? Is that just
yeah? You basically, it's part of your implementation. They basically run that model, back test it, and then it's a dynamic. It's a learning model. So as more activities create more opportunities, the model learns and continues to adjust over time.
Yeah. One thing that I really like to do a lot is take things that are working well in B2C and then see how they might be adapted in B2B.
Yep.
But this gives me a thought, because one thing that I said on a recent podcast was I love in B2C e-commerce the add to cart button.
Yep.
It's a beautiful intent signal,
Yep.
And you can do all types of fun stuff with it on the e-commerce side. I wish there was such a thing on the B2B side, like a generally accepted intent signal. But
there's a few of them, right? I always think like the G2 or the other review sites are high intent signals, particularly if they're doing a comparison view, right? If they put you and 2 of your 3 competitors up and do a little comparison view, like super high intent signal.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. The versus searches too, like Kazoo versus,
Yep, exactly. Yeah, for sure. I think there's some of that in the B2B, but I really like your thinking there.
Now, it'd be really cool in terms of the keyword level targeting that you're doing. So that looks, both in terms of the content of the keywords and just visibly how it's portrayed, a lot like the custom intent audience builder within Google Ads.
Yep.
So exactly. I wonder, like, if you were to take those same keywords, build an audience on Google Ads, and run traffic to the site, if it would have like a higher account match rate than normal,
Yeah, it'd be interesting to check that out. And I think that's one of the areas, once we get a little further down our maturity curve on our paid search, would be, are there gaps or areas where we can better align, at least from a keyword perspective, our paid search campaigns with our display and the other campaigns we're running.
Now, is this all anonymized data? There's no PII in this platform?
No, like the contact data all sits in Salesforce. It depends, I guess, what you call anonymized. A lot of it obviously is IP address based, right? And that they're identifying a graph basically of IPs that connect to companies. And interestingly, like last April, May timeframe, the performance of the data tanked because everybody moved out of the offices, right? And they've been able to kind of reconnect and rebuild that network and that graph as people have logged into sites and, kind of started doing work from different IP addresses significantly. They've kind of rebuilt a new graph now. And I think we saw that on like the Google side as well, right? Like search performance and algorithm updates and all the things that had to kind of readjust for how people were now interacting with the web.
Yep. Another big topic on a lot of brands' minds these days is CDP, customer data platforms, which sit basically on top of or alongside data warehouses and CRM, and they ingest all that data and allow for segmentation and activation of audiences. You consider, this is kind of a CDP in a way.
I would, and full disclosure, I'm actually an advisor to Lytics, which is a CDP.
Okay.
But I would consider this to be an embedded CDP, right? In that it's almost a bespoke version of a CDP. It's built for B2B. It's built to drive kind of their activation platform in general. But it is, for all intents and purposes, there's a CDP sitting under it. Like they have multi-sourced all the firmographic data and the contact data, and they do the overlays and maintenance on that. It connects to Salesforce, so they basically have all your all your customer data and attributes in it as well. And then they're overlaying all the intent data and putting a model on it.
Yep. Now I know we're right at 4:30, and I do want to be sensitive to your time, but I am wondering on 6sense, are you able to build custom segments and then activate those like on Google Display or?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've built, just for an example, a credit union segment, which has 583 credit unions in it. And we've got 47 that we think are in market for one of our products.
Yeah.
So we've activated that segment everywhere we can. The good news is you can push the segments into custom dimensions in GA, so you can pick them up in Google Ads.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. All right, my man. Well, I could go on for hours, but
Yeah.
I don't want to keep you too long. I do want to talk to you again soon because I've been looking into Kazoo. I know that there was, there's been some rockiness, but I do want to hear a little bit more about your experience and kind of have a brainstorming session specifically about Kazoo.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be on the podcast.
Absolutely.